Welcome, everybody. I am Dianna Cohen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Plastic Pollution Coalition, and welcome to the Plastic Pollution Coalition Global Webinar Series, Getting Ready for Plastic Free July. Woo! I want to really do a big shout out to everybody in Australia who's tuning in right now because in particular, our special guest who will be presenting first, Rebecca Prince-Ruiz, is getting in touch with us, calling in from Perth, Australia, and I believe it is 6 a.m. for her. So thank you very much for being a part of this, and welcome, welcome. This is our first webinar, and today we're getting ready for Plastic Free July. I think we've waited and a lot of people have joined, so I'll just go right to it. Today, we're really excited to discuss Plastic Free July, the movement, alternatives and solutions to single-use plastic, in conversation with Rebecca Prince-Ruiz. She's the founder and executive director of Plastic Free July. I'm Dianna Cohen. Again, like I said, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Plastic Pollution Coalition. Plastic Pollution Coalition is a global coalition. We are working to stop plastic pollution and its toxic impact on human health, animal health, the ocean and waterways, and the environment. We just turned 10 last year, and we are over 1,200 businesses and organizations around the world, all working towards this common goal together, a world free of plastic pollution, coming from 77 different countries. I think this first webinar is a really great example of the might and the power of people all around the world who are all working on this issue. And Plastic Free July is a great example of a wonderful hashtag and a whole project that allows and engenders collaboration. So I'm very, very excited and very honored and pleased to get into this with you guys. So a few things to begin. Today, obviously, we're going to discuss the Plastic Free July movement and alternatives and solutions to single-use plastic in conversation with Rebecca Prince-Ruiz, the founder and executive director of Plastic Free July. We will dive into the creation, evolution, and expansion of Plastic Free July and how we can collaborate for impact locally and globally to address and solve plastic pollution. Thank you to our coalition members and allies for joining us today, for sharing all of the incredibly creative projects you are working on around the world to reduce plastic pollution. I quickly want to just share our agenda with you. We are going to start out with a quick poll. It's going to be 3 questions. We're going to then share the results to each question consecutively, and I'll introduce Rebecca after that. We'll have a conversation following her presentation with Shilpi Chhotray of Break Free from Plastic and young Grguras from Post-Landfill Action Network, as well as a short presentation from Tia Grazette, founder of The Good Society. Please be sure to add your questions to the chat box during this webinar, and we will have a Q&A to discuss them. Here's a little housekeeping first. Type your questions into the chat box. Please participate in our poll, which is coming up right now, and please stay on mute so that we can limit background noise. Okay, if you're ready, you're going to have about 20 seconds to respond to each of these 3 consecutive questions, and then we'll show the results. Here comes the poll. You can just click on the screen. Next question. Great. Next question. Wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you all for participating in the poll. And again, it's just incredible to have so many people tuning in from different places. Welcome, welcome everyone. And thank you for participating in the poll. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce Rebecca Prince-Ruiz. She is the founder of Plastic Free July, one of the world's leading environmental movements, empowering people to reduce single-use plastic. Rebecca is the executive director of the not-for-profit Plastic Free Foundation that brings the public and business together with the vision of a world without plastic waste. She has a Bachelor of Science with 25 years of experience in environmental and waste management, community engagement and sustainability, behavior change, and believes we can all take action to reduce our environmental footprint. Rebecca is a regular media commentator, public speaker, and co-author of the new book, Plastic Free, the inspiring story of a global environmental movement and why it matters. Released by New South Books for July in Australia and in the United States by Columbia University Press this December. Welcome, Rebecca. Good morning to you in Perth, Australia. Welcome.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Lovely to hear how many places around the world people are dialing in from, and thanks so much for having me along for this conversation. So I think it's really important. This is the 10th Plastic Free July this year, and as we go into it, I've seen some questions popping up there in around COVID, and it is obviously a challenge this year. The world is a different place in many places. The use of many of the single-use alternatives to single-use plastic that we've come to start using are no longer available. And I'm not sure if anyone else can see the slides. I can't actually see them, Dianna, so I'm not quite sure where you're up to with that. But if you can just pop to the second one, if your audience can see it. And I think what I wanted to start out by saying this morning as we get ready for Plastic Free July is that whilst there are still many things that we can't do, in many places you can't use reusable shopping bags, for example, or cafes limiting the use of reusable cups for takeaway drinks, there's still plenty of things that we can do. And I think that it's really important, as we always do in Plastic Free July, is to focus on the changes that we can make, the positive things that we can do in our own lives and our communities, rather than focusing on the things that we can't. And as we start to look around us and the plastics in our lives, I still feel on balance there's way more things that we can avoid rather than we can't. So if you can just flick on to the third slide. So Plastic Free July is a challenge that started here in Perth in Western Australia back in 2011. And when I started out, I didn't set out to start a global movement. I set out just to change my own behaviour. And I think that many people think, well, what difference can one person make when we're making changes in the face of the overwhelming prevalence of plastic in their lives? And the changes that I've seen happen over the last 10 years, I guess, have given me hope that, you know, I'm not alone. And the growth of Plastic Free July has really been because of so many people who've taken it on, made changes in their own lives, and then taken those changes into their communities, into their schools, into their workplaces, into their businesses and community organisations. And I think it's so fantastic to see everyone here today and so many people who've participated before or giving it a go for the first time, because unless so many people around the world had taken it on in their own lives and into their wider spheres of influence, it certainly wouldn't be the challenge that it is today. So it grew from a handful of people that decided to join me when I had this idea to reduce single-use plastic for a month into now what's a global movement. And if you can just move on to the fourth slide there, here's just an example of some of the things that people have done around the world. And I guess what we've really learnt, what we've seen over the last 10 years is an incredible growth of awareness about the plastic pollution problem. And the story of plastics is just, you know, the latest example of a documentary that's highlighting the breadth and the depth and the underlying drivers of this plastic waste issue. And the plastic pollution problem, particularly ocean plastics, has become foremost in people's minds. And with Plastic Free July, because we didn't set out to start an education campaign, it was really just about changing ourselves. And as anyone who will have tried this will know, it's really difficult. But what we found by doing it together, by sharing our ideas, by sharing stories, by commiserating on our challenges, is that one, firstly, it actually helped because we learnt solutions. And secondly, by doing it together, we weren't alone. And sometimes people found that they might be the only person in their home or at their workplace that were concerned, that were acting on this, and doing it together certainly empowered and enabled them to make change. And at its heart, that's what Plastic Free July is. We're really about sharing stories of change and sharing stories from around the world of how people have tackled plastics in their own lives, and then they felt good about having less plastic in their bin, about buying less packaged food, eating more healthily, shopping at local farmers markets or supporting independent retailers. And then they took it into their workplace maybe and would have a plastic-free morning tea and different community kind of activities. And so just moving right along with the slides to the fifth one there, the growth, as I said, has been very grassroots, and it's really a great testament to the people who've been taking action. And moving along one slide more, please. What we've really focused on in the campaign, as it has become a campaign and an organisation and now a not-for-profit, is focusing on a really mainstream audience. And I've worked very closely over the last few years with a behavioural scientist, and we have, beneath the simplicity of the campaign, we've done an enormous amount of research over the last few years, really digging down and looking at what does it really take to make behaviour change, not just from the converted, all of you wonderful people that are on this website, but what does it take to make change to a mainstream audience? And what I've learned through doing that is that, just moving on to the next slide, is that although we have very high levels of awareness and concern about this plastic waste issue, so when we do global surveys, 8 out of 10 people say, I'm concerned about plastic waste ending up in landfill and the oceans. But what we have is a disconnect between people's concern and their attitudes and their actual behaviours. So what we have found, and the new kind of approach, just moving on to the next slide, please, with Plastic Free July, is we've tested all of our messaging on the streets and asked people lots of questions and tested, what resonates with you, what works for you. And that's how we've come up with this choose to refuse message, because plastic free, it's, I wouldn't be talking to you on this via this link, and we wouldn't have the use of this amazing technology we have now without plastics. And so we really needed to somehow better get across our message that we're about just choosing to refuse single-use plastics. And for any person, this is something that might look different in their own lives, and giving people choice is really important. So if we move on to the next slide there, I'm hoping we're all on the same page, because I still can't see your screen there, Dianna.
We're seeing the image that says join millions of people reducing their plastic waste.
Great. So that's the website there, and we've deliberately chosen illustrations because Perth is the most remote city in the world, and we really wanted the campaign to reflect the diverse nature of our audience. It is indeed now a global campaign, And moving to the next one, please. The storytelling, as I said, is really important. And I know that's something that the Plastic Pollution Coalition is values, and Dianna and I have talked about this a lot. You know, if you know, that saying alone, we're a drop, together and we're an ocean. And the more that we can collaborate, we can learn from each other's mistakes. So we're not just reading the headline, oh, this town went straw free, or this business got rid of single-use plastics. It's, you know, how did you do that? What were the challenges you faced? What were the barriers that you overcame? So just moving on to the next one, on the website, there's lots of resources there that people can download. I love seeing all the materials translated into different languages. People can download them and take them into their spheres of influence. And when people sign up for the challenge, and I really encourage everyone who hasn't already done so to do so today, we do a lot of, we survey our participants before they do the challenge. We ask them lots of questions about their consumer choices and behaviours, and it nudges people to realise, oh, I might have done this, but I've got all this other plastic in my life. And then we repeat that survey again at the end of the challenge. And then we also take that survey to the general public. So behind what we do, there's a lot of research. And if you can move to that slide with impacts, even though the challenge is for Plastic Free July, what we found is that 9 out of 10 of our participants make one or more long-term changes in their behaviour and new habits. And so the impact of the challenge has been extraordinary in terms of its growth. Last year there were 250 million people from 177 countries worldwide taking the challenge, and the amount of waste that's avoided. So the average participant would reduce their waste by 5%, and that's their general waste and their recycling. And that's what we're really aiming to do here, is rather than get a few people to do everything, but get millions of people to make small changes. And what happens with those small changes is that's when we can start to put pressure on business and government. And we've obviously had some small wins, as the story of plastic, you know, really shows. We have a long way to go, and we have with plastic production set to increase, this is a challenge that we're going to be working on for some time. But I really think that when we see the rise of things like plastic bag bans, or introduction of container deposit schemes, or banning particular problematic single-use plastic items, when you look at those changes, it's because there has been such a groundswell of community concern and community change. So I know there's lots of questions from the audience, Dianna, and you also have questions of your own. So I might just stop sharing my slides there and throw it over to you to do the question.
Rebecca, actually, if you'd like to just go through, you only have a couple more slides. Let's go through them. We've just put up the image with baked bread and things on it.
Oh, okay. So I guess the kind of point there is that we had a moment back at the end of March, and when the team got together and we thought, well, what do we do? Do we obviously human health is paramount, and with the we didn't want to be insensitive to that. There was challenge, people have financial pressures, but what we've been delighted to see is how many people, through the positives, despite the great suffering and challenges, the positives that have come out. And I guess I'd just like to, we take heart from that, the fact that that with people, baking more at home, our local many supermarkets in Australia ran out of flour or sugar as people were buying seedlings and starting to grow things and learn how to make things from scratch. To me, that when I talked to our behavioural scientist about this, he said to me, "Oh, Rebecca, at a time when people have no control over their lives, taking control by doing these things is really important." So he said there's a need for it more than ever. So what we're doing this year is, rather than focusing on what people can't do, such as perhaps taking reusable shopping bags, etc., is really focus on what people can do to help them to live, to use what they have to be more resourceful. We, in both our countries, Dianna, we waste 40% of all of the food which is grown is wasted. And so let's look to what's in our what we can, using our resources wisely. Let's use those leftover veggies from last week from that have gone a bit wilted. Let's learn how to make stock. Let's make some soup. Let's look at those things that we can't buy that are packaged in plastic. Learning how to make easy snacks or doing some home baking, and that's what we're really focusing on this year. All the things that people still can do in the home, even if they can't do when they're out and about.
Rebecca, I think another thing that people could consider is composting as well. So do you have any final word just for your presentation? I know we're going to have a conversation now, so.
Yeah, I guess my final words I'm sure we've got a bit of a range of audience here, from people who've been active in the plastic space for a long time and they're looking at, how to activate their community, or engaging with businesses, or maybe you're someone who's just taking it on for the first time in your own life. My take-home message is really, do what you can with where you are in your circumstances. And I think that the more we have these conversations and support each other, use all of the great work and the great commitment and passion from this group of people, and so many not-for-profits and organisations that are active on this issue around the world. We really need to come together and combine our efforts, and together we can make a difference.
I agree. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I thought I'd move us into a conversation, and then we have a couple other short presentations and the Q&A. So I agree with you. We've spoken of this many times. Collaboration, I think, is really key. And I know there are a bunch of questions that have to do with that as well, but I wondered if you could just give us a quick backstory of what brought you to and inspired you to create Plastic Free July.
So for me, I thought I was living pretty sustainably. I always took my reusable shopping bag, and I never bought bottled water, purely because why would I waste my money when I could get it free from the tap? And but for me, my aha awakening moment came from visiting a recycling facility and seeing where my household recycling went each week, and just being really overwhelmed by the volume. And of course, recycling is important, but it's only part of the solution. And I had felt like if I put my recycling bin out onto the street and it was full, I was helping the planet. And of course, we want our packaging and resources to be recycled rather than landfill. But it suddenly made me realize the best thing I can do for the planet is just buy and accept and consume less. And so for me, it was that taking personal responsibility, because for the first time, I could picture where that bag that my bread had come in, or the yogurt, plastic yogurt container, I knew where it was going. I knew the particular challenges around recycling plastic, but I then knew that I had a personal responsibility for it.
I was thinking, a lot of us come to this from the personal, and then that expands and you begin to look around your community, and then you take that a little further and you look at your school or your place of work. And then of course you get to looking at what's happening in your town or your city or your state or your country or internationally. And I'm wondering how you see leverage points in terms of using policy and legislation to move the dial.
I think I think we need both. And as I said, when we started this here in my home state 10 years ago, our environment minister was on the record saying we will never ban plastic shopping bags. They have no impact on the environment. And fast forward the clock 5 years, through lots of hard works by community groups, making bags, writing petitions, that changed, and our plastic bag ban was introduced. So I think we leverage in different ways. Some of us are about making changes in our own lives and supporting those campaigns, whereas other people would be more where they would take their own personal action on their personal values would be into that advocacy kind of space. And I think, the interesting thing is often when you start to have these conversations about, and you're learning about whether it's policy changes from governments or changes that businesses are making, and I explored many of these stories in the book Plastic Free, when you start to track things back, you can find the individual changes that actually started that that were the root cause of these bigger systems changes. So it's kind of a spectrum, but when it doesn't, because you start with your own life, I don't think it necessarily means that you will need to step into that advocacy space, although we can definitely support that. But ultimately, like, policy change is, and good public policy is what we need.
I agree with you. I know there are a lot of amazing questions. One of them I thought I'd ask you right away. Are you familiar with the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act that's been introduced here? It's a federal piece of legislation that's very comprehensive. I see people saying that recycling's not really set up, the infrastructure in the city or the town that they're based in currently, but I think there's been a lot revealed about recycling in the last couple of years, particularly with the China sword and China no longer taking recycling back. I know that the rates just in the United States have dropped from less than 9%. They were projected to drop by the end of 2018 to 4.4%, and by the end of 2019 to 2.6% for plastic, which is basically like not really recycling anything at all. So what's interesting about the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act here in the US that's been introduced by Udall and Lowenthal is that it has a really comprehensive view, and also looking at, while supporting infrastructure, which we don't have particularly good infrastructure. So is anything like that brewing from your perspective and what you're seeing with Plastic Free July?
And one of the things that I see is Plastic Free July is we take people on a journey, and at the end of the month, and of course, we don't just stop our work on the 1st of August, is we find that the audience has a great appetite many people in the audience would have an appetite to learn, what can we do next? And there is certainly action in a number of jurisdictions to introduce similar legislation. Right. I think, going back to that recycling issue, Dianna, I think one of the fundamental issues with the plastic waste problem is that, you know, we've got these numbers 1 to 7 on our recycling, but there's, you know, apart from plastics number 1 and 2, there's not really a market, and it's a commodity. And so because it's cheaper and easier for producers to use virgin plastics than recycled content, we're all lulled into this false sense of, oh, but it's got the recycling symbol on it. And now we're learning the hard and ugly truth. So I think that, you know, we also, apart from banning particular problematic single-use plastics, I think we really need to have minimum mandated recycled content,
Right.
because that then sets a level playing field for business, and it's going to drive a strong recycling industry. And unless we have that, then, you know, it's going to be the individuals at that at the level of the recycling facilities. Our counties and our cities and states can't afford to be. That's why we're shipping it overseas to be processed, because it's too costly in our own countries. But we need to set those market drivers.
Right, Rebecca, well, that's why I love your choose to refuse single-use plastic in terms of your messaging. And what I'd like to do now is just take us for a short presentation from Shilpi Chhotray, who is the Global Communications Lead for Break Free from Plastic. And just quick introduction, Shilpi is responsible for the development of communication strategies that advance the goals of the Break Free from Plastic movement. Shilpi is also the founder of Samudra Skin and Sea, a zero-waste skincare line featuring wild harvested seaweed. I happen to know that she packages in glass, and she worked very hard to get bamboo lids. So kudos for that, Shilpi. And Samudra is a proud Plastic Pollution Coalition member. So I turn it to you, Shilpi.
Woohoo! Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Dianna and Team PPC, for me to join. And great to meet you, Rebecca, finally. So for those of you that might not be familiar with Break Free from Plastic, we are a global movement of more than 2,500 organizations worldwide working at all points in the plastic pollution life cycle, from extraction to production to consumption and even disposal. So we work at the policy level on corporate campaign culture change with a regional focus in Europe, United States, Asia, Latin America, and Africa. This is the third year participating in Plastic Free July with a systems change approach. So connecting dots to climate. 99% of plastic comes from a fossil fuel-based source. And environmentalists, centering communities that are these are generally communities of color. Although lifestyle changes, like bringing a reusable bag and water bottle, is a great start, we believe that energy really needs to be on corporate accountability, stronger leadership from the government to do their job in protecting people and planet. Especially now with the pandemic, this is relevant more than ever. So this year we've developed just recovery framing when talking about Plastic Free July to advocate as a movement for the future we want to see. Just recovery includes the following 5 thematic principles: prioritizing health for people and planet, investing in solutions, not industry bailouts, replacing single use with sustainable systems, demanding corporate and government accountability, and engaging impacted communities. So I'd love to close with highlighting a few of our member activities this year from around the world. In the UK, there's City to Sea's contactless coffee campaign. So getting reusables back on the menu safely by working directly with a broad network of cafes, restaurants, and grocers doing takeaway. In the Philippines, we'll be highlighting a major report called Sachet Economy. So if you don't know what sachets are, they're like, think ketchup packet. It's multi-layered single-use plastic packaging. It cannot be recycled or in any sort of recycling infrastructure. It will contain anything from coffee to shampoo to rice. So there are big problems in these small packets. The report will be launched on July 2nd, 2 p.m. Manila time. The report is looking at this economy in the Philippines worsening the growing plastic pollution crisis and how big businesses are corrupting Filipino culture and what we can do about it. We're also going to be taking action with US-based Center for Biological Diversity to stop Formosa Plastics from building a petrochemical complex in St. James Parish, Louisiana. This is a plastics plant that would emit up to 13 million tons of greenhouse gases in a predominantly Black community already burdened by industrial air pollution. Especially now with COVID, this has to stop. And Dianna, I'm so glad you mentioned the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. So why we love this piece of policy so much that it would actually put a moratorium on new plastic plants. So this is a kind of systemic reform and policy we really advocate for. A couple more, we'll also be sharing an interactive map from Groundwork and the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives, highlighting different countries with existing legislation on plastic. It'll eventually be living on our Break Free from Plastic website as a living resource. And of course, we'll be highlighting PPC's freshly minted Healthy Pregnancy Guide. I recommend everyone check that out. And I would have included Young's awesome project from Post-Landfill Action Network, but they are here to present themselves. So I'll wrap with that.
Thank you so much, Shilpi. Thank you. That's so much good stuff happening. And Young, I'm so excited to introduce you. Thank you for joining us. Please welcome with me Young Grguras. They is the U.S. coordinator for plastic-free campuses at PLAN, Post-Landfill Action Network. And they is here to tell us about this project and plans for Plastic-Free July. Young graduated from the University of Pittsburgh in 2019 with a dual degree in environmental studies and ecology and evolution. While in undergrad, Young organized the Fossil Fuel Divestment Campaign. Ow! Check out Fossil Free Pittsburgh on Facebook, and worked as a sustainability program associate for the university. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Young.
Hey everyone. As you can see on there, I work for PLAN, the Post-Landfill Action Network, and we are a small nonprofit that advises colleges and universities across the U.S. on zero waste and other sustainability projects. We were actually founded by students 7 years ago who started a move-out program, and now we've grown to 12 staff. We believe that universities and colleges serve as vectors for change, so we're able to showcase zero waste systems and other things like divestment on campuses so that it's able to be replicated at a larger level. We started our Break Free from Plastic campaign after the summer of 2018. That seemed like everybody was doing a straw ban, but not going beyond that. So at PLAN, we want to go beyond that and ban all single-use plastics, which includes the things like utensils and clamshells on college campuses. Then this summer, we're engaging with Plastic Free July through an action camp. And this camp is a month-long engagement that will give you all the necessary tools to jumpstart a campaign to eliminate plastic on your campus. It's going to be really fun. I'll be there. We're going to watch the story of plastic. And then you can email me if you have any more questions. I'll throw my email in there if it's not there.
Thank you so much, Young. I really appreciate that. And now it is my great pleasure to share a short 1-minute video from our friend Tia Grazette. She's the founder of Le Good Society. Tia is an acclaimed creative director and content director who has worked for many brands and magazines, including British Vogue, Tatler, Levi's, BBC, and created her own World Issues and Street Art magazine, as well as working on a number of global environmental awareness campaigns, including the Plastiki Expedition. So if you guys will just join me, we'll have a chance to view Tia's video.
Hi everyone, it's Tia from Le Good Society. I have curated and participated in an art exhibition with several other artists, which will be displayed on digital billboards across the UK from the 6th of July for 2 weeks. As we all know, it's Plastic Free July, and what better way to encourage people to live with less plastic than through art? It's also the 10-year anniversary of the Plastiki Expedition, which was a boat we built made from recycled plastic, which sailed across the Pacific in 2010 and created awareness of plastic pollution and the importance of the oceans. So this exhibition will not only encourage people to live with less plastic, It will also pay homage to the Plastiki expedition, looking at how far we've come, but how far we still desperately need to go in the fight against plastic pollution. Keep an eye out for the art if you're in the UK, but if not, don't worry, you'll be able to see it online at the Le Good Society website and Instagram page. And if you have any questions or you just want to say hi, feel free to message me across Instagram at Le Good Society. We hope you enjoy it.
Let's start out with a question that a lot of people have asked. This is a simple question that's kind of based at the personal level. Folks are wondering if there are any suggestions for how to work with grocery stores and delis to reduce their use of single-use plastic. And they gave an example. They said, for example, when I go to the deli counter and get a pound of sliced cheese and they put it in a plastic bag, are there alternatives for them to use that won't increase their costs? Could we maybe take that to Rebecca first?
So that's a great question, and I guess I've seen different solutions in different places. So sometimes it's having the conversation around being able to take your own reusable containers, so that then doesn't add any cost to the retailers. And we saw over last summer, I think it was in New Zealand, that became a widespread practice with in their major supermarkets there. And then there's also a number of schemes where you put a deposit on a container and then get that deposit refunded when it's taken back. In terms of other alternatives that the retailer can provide, there is paper. I've seen a number of different types of paper packaging, but then the challenge there is they're often lined with a thin layer of plastic. So that then, I know from putting them in my own composting, you need to kind of try and peel off that layer of plastic first. So as always, the kind of general principles, and what we can do to reduce and reuse, then we look at, well, what's the next packaging type that would be recyclable, or the challenge with even compostable packaging is, where is that going to end up? Is it actually going to be composted? So delis aren't an easy one, but there are some good reuse options.
Well, and there are other questions along the same lines. One of them is someone asking, when we talk about being plastic free, are we also including like Tupperware and other containers made out of plastic, but which are reusable? And I'd like to ask you about that, but also to ask Young about it and how they're dealing with it on campuses as well. But go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, so everything that we use, every item has got a footprint, and when we follow that principle of reducing, reusing, recycling, that kind of basic waste hierarchy mantra, it makes no sense to just throw out what we've got so we can buy the plastic-free alternative. We're absolutely about using what we have. This is health concerns about potentially storing food in plastic aside, we'd say definitely. And we're not about, it's also, we need to think about that with our use of other reusables as well. It's not that we're encouraging people to buy the latest colour of reusable cup, or we have got a ban in our house of reusable bags, because every time you go to an event or something, people want to give you a new great calico bag, but we've already got 12 bags and that's more than enough for our household. So it's about using what we have and choosing all of our resources wisely beyond plastic.
Yeah, and Young, how are you addressing that on campuses?
Yeah, well, so the reusable system needs to be better than BYO. At colleges and universities, we often go to a library type system. So that is the dining services has plastic clamshells that are hard plastic that are used indefinitely, that just have a barcode on them. And those barcodes can be associated with a student ID that every student has to have. So when they go through to check out, they check out the container just like they would a library book, and they return it. This is like a program that could work in any small community. And the idea there is putting it on the business's side. Like, this is a part of their business model. They don't even offer the single-use plastic. And that's how you get the system to change. You got to make the easiest option the right option.
Right. Shilpi, would you like to add anything to this?
I mean, I love what Young said. I think we just need to be of false solutions, especially when things are being claimed to be compostable or made of bioplastics. And, you know, Dianna, we talk about this a lot. Like, if there's a compostable product that ends up into the recycling infrastructure, it can really wreak a lot of havoc. So I'm with Young. I think the reusable kind of systems change approach is best, and getting it down to a place where the economics make sense.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, just mention for some of the folks who are tuning into this, that there are some great models that we've seen that are kind of library system or reusable models. Like Vessel is a pretty interesting model. That's a reusable coffee cup. But I've also seen great stuff like that out of Australia, both, you know, the Western coast where you're based, Rebecca, and on the Eastern coast in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and Byron. Folks, particularly at smaller kind of coffee shops, maybe not big chains, but folks using a reusable cup or have a basket of beautiful reusable mugs and things like that folks are able to use. I think a lot of people don't realize that obviously this has all shifted a little bit with COVID, but, you know, hopefully we're going to come out the other side of this in the near future, and we'll be able to get everything back on track. But a lot of people are unaware that these bigger coffee chains and tea chains like Coffee Bean, Starbucks, Peet's in the United States, well, actually I saw a lot of Starbucks in Southeast Asia as well, that they give a small discount if you bring your own reusable cup. And they just, for some reason, none of these coffee companies advertise that. But I think the first one that starts really highlighting that is going to experience a really tremendous amount of, you know, customer loyalty, particularly from people like me and young people, you know, who just people in general who care about this issue and want to be helping create change. So.
And I think if I can just jump in and to add to that, Dianna, and going back to someone talking about, had a comment a few minutes ago about putting a tax on plastic, I'd actually like to flip that. So I'd actually like to flip our thinking that you get a discount for having the right thing, that if you choose to accept a piece of polluting plastic packaging, you're paying the tax on that. So you're paying the cost of that to be disposed of and managed. So I like what the initiative that's happened in Berkeley and in San Francisco, where there's a fee if you want to get a disposable item.
I think it's really interesting to use carrots and sticks. I think it's just like anything where you want to help create behavior change. You have to try these they're different leverage points, right? So there was a question actually for Young about how can college students get involved with plastic-free campuses? So could you share that with us, Young?
You should come to our action camp. There's registration I put in the chat, but also I put my Calendly link and we can have a meeting and chat. One of the hardest things is that every university is so different, but we have a network of over 400, so we've seen a lot of things. And we know a lot of the shortcuts that universities try to do. So I'm more than happy. It's my favorite part of my job is to talk with people at colleges and universities about their frustrations and what we can do together.
Could I also add to that? I know because we worked on some of these guides with Post-Landfill Action Network, we produced a plastic campus reduction guide together, and along with 5 Gyres, a styrofoam campus reduction guide. And there are all these incredible, really beautiful, useful tools that are just free and available to people to download. So can you just say one more thing about the camp really quickly? Like, give us the overview of that?
Yeah, so our camp is a quick overview of the plastic pollution problem, but then jumps very quickly into campaign planning. And my idea for this kind of sprang from that I want these students to understand everything I do about this problem. I came from the climate change scene and started working in plastic because a petrochemical cracker plant was being built in my community. So I have come down from the upstream side, which is not usually how it happens. So this camp is going to go over environmental justice and how environmental racism is such a big part of this, and then also the petrochemical side, and finding the right messaging that works for your campus, along with just general things like canvassing and how to talk to someone when they're walking on the street.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for explaining that. So, and is it available for anybody to sign up, or are you looking for students of a particular age? And would it be also applicable to like high school students or middle school who might be interested in bringing this to their campus?
Yeah, anybody can register for the campus. We're a college and university based one. So if you are in high school, middle school, I would say reach out to PPC because they have a lot of great stuff on that, or Algalita. And I'm happy to make those connections with you. And we can talk about how to get you involved.
So I have a big question that's come in from a number of different people, and it's kind of a question for all of you. How do we make plastic-free July all year round? Rebecca?
Great question. So for what our research shows, Dianna, is that 9 out of 10 people participating in the challenge make 1 or 2 more behaviour changes, new behaviour changes that they keep on year round. So people are there, people are on the journey, and I think that there is that opportunity after Plastic Free July to connect people with other great campaigns and work that's happening. We are also July isn't a great month for schools and in both hemispheres. So we're looking at work supporting our schools they'll often do their plastics challenge in other months of the year. We're also I think that kind of end of year festive season is another real point where we could start to look at people's consumer spending and their choices and build that momentum. So it's something we're thinking about and working on a lot, and that's why I'm really excited to be part of this and a member of PPC and break free from plastic and look at how do we together expand that momentum and keep this conversation going, because I think we can take this model of this 1 month, which brings our kind of this point of global kind of focus on this issue, to expand it and support other initiatives that are happening the rest of the year.
I just want to be cognizant of time, you guys, because we're kind of wrapping up. We're coming to the end. So I was wondering, Rebecca, if you'd like to say anything, just parting words to folks, or how they could get involved with Plastic Free July. What would you like?
It's been so exciting to hear about all of the different initiatives. I love the campus initiative. I would just encourage people to sign up for the challenge. There's a events map on the website. Please share that there. Please share your events there, because people are going to those in different places. And just remember to do what you can, and a lot of people doing a few small things can grow our impact. And also don't think that just because someone isn't doing the same things as you doesn't mean that they don't care about it. And a clean environment is something that we all want, and let's try and meet people where they're at as well.
That sounds great. Thank you, Rebecca. Young, do you have any parting words you'd like to share with everybody?
Our plan's theory of change is nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. And I think this is a really important takeaway, is that you do not need to kill yourself in a whole world of doing everything without plastic. Like, that's not possible. The system isn't made for that yet. We're trying to change the system so that is the norm. So, find your point. We call it our point of intervention theory. find the point where you want to intervene, whether that be participating in Plastic Free July, so bring in your reusable bag, or maybe you're just, maybe you're selling skincare products like Shilpi. That's so cool. But there's a point for everybody along the linear consumption economy to intervene.
Great, thank you. And I think Shilpi got bumped off, but she's back. Shilpi, if you can unmute, do you have a final word you'd like to share with everyone from Break Free?
Yeah, you know, I think our citizen action muscles have gotten really weak on a slightly different take. I think, yes, plug in where you can, but we all need to be doing so much more. Be a little bit easier for myself to say, or Young, or Dianna, or Rebecca, who, you know, we do this full time, we get paid to be activists and speak the truth about these issues. But, you know, everyone has access to social media. It's very easy to get on Twitter and say, hey, Coca-Cola, I refuse to have this packaging, or tell Amazon, like, this is absolutely ridiculous that my tiny little USB is coming in, because this just happened to my husband and he did it sneakily behind my back, but this is coming in so much packaging. So yeah, to Young, yes, to Rebecca, but, and like, let's keep the energy up. We have to, we are literally drowning in plastic. Let's like kill it for Plastic Free July.
Woo! So with that, I'm going to wrap everything up. I just want to say a humongous, enormous thank you, in particular to all of our presenters. And the video that we weren't able to see from Tia is in the chat box, but we'll also be sharing a follow-up email with everyone, with email links to many of the projects that we've mentioned here so that you can find them. Okay, big thank you, Rebecca, especially for getting up so early in Perth. Thank you to Shilpi, thank you to Young, thank you to Tia. Please also mark your calendars and tune in for our next webinar. I don't know that I have the exact date in front of me. We were trying to finalize it before this, but it is coming up in July, at the end of July, and it will be focused on plastic and healthy pregnancy in conjunction with our Healthy Pregnancy Guide, which is available online. You can sign up and download it for free from our site, and it'll feature Amy Ziff, the founder of Made Safe, and Latham Thomas, the founder of Mama Glow. So I hope that you can all tune back in for that. I want to thank our technical support, everyone for our technical support, our Plastic Pollution Coalition team, including Roshani Kothari and Dan Kerry, as well as AnnaRose Hambrecht and Emily DiFrisco. And we wanted to try and take a picture of everybody who's still on the call. If everyone can, I don't know, if your camera's on, you feel like holding up your favorite reusable cup, whatever, we were going to try and take a screenshot together. So will you pass me that cup? Thank you. Grab your bottle and we're ready. Cheers. I hope someone from my team's taking it. Screenshot. Woo! Thank you, everybody. And with that, we want to wish everyone a happy, healthy, just, and successful plastic-free July. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see everyone. Thank you for tuning in.